Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 306.
Yeah, 306, another update episode, which is cool because we've gone a couple episodes without one.
I wonder if are we on 306? Am I off? Should we have confirmed this before we started this podcast?
So it's been a while since we've had the we don't know what episode it is where Orlando messes it up. And so we figured now that we're in the 300s, we got to, throw this out there to all of you who longtime listeners, you missed those days when Orlando didn't know. So it doesn't matter. Either way, you can read the episode number. But we are. It's 306. So we got an update episode today. So what's been going on?
Oh, wow. Starting with me as I'm okay. So I want to super confirm it's 306, but it's been an interesting time because I'm shifting in what I'm selling. So I used to be a lot about picking up Harley and picking up cowboy boots and Merrill shoes and a lot of clothing. And I still do that. Like that's still pretty much my bread and butter and what I pick up. But what I'm finding is that those items are getting harder to source. And along with that, it is episode 306, by the way, they're getting harder to source and they're not selling like they used to. Right. So I've mentioned this before where like Harley Davidson, I could pick up pretty much any shirt, even if it was the plainest shirt. It might say just like San Diego, Harley Davidson, and it would sell for like $40-$50. And those days are gone. Now those shirts are like $20. And to sell those shirts that sell for about $40 to $50, you have to have a nice graphic on the back. It has to be usually from a location that's like unique, or like special to motorcycle riding or whatever it is. And for myself, I'm kind of changing in the fact that I'm finding other items I'm enjoying more sourcing. And not only that, I'm finding them to be more profitable. So for example, right now I am getting into cameras, which is something I probably need to talk to Mike about because I just had a return. Somebody said that my mount measurements were off. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, it depends.
So it's like a $500 lens.
Yeah. So different lenses have different mount types. So, Canon, you can have a Canon camera, but there's going to be various like the different lenses will attach to different types of cameras. So if you say it's an EF mount, but it doesn't actually attach to a camera that can take an EF. So I said
it was micro 3/4.
Oh yeah, so 4/3. So micro 4/3.
But it wasn't.
No, those are very new lenses.
Okay.
They're like small. They're for like very small sensors. So yeah, that's a specific type of lens that'll attach to a certain type of camera. So a crop sensor lens wouldn't work with a micro unless you had an adapter for it. So yeah, you've got to be careful.
I'm learning.
Yeah, it would be like you sold a PlayStation game, as if it was an Xbox game. It might be the same game, but it won't work in that system. Like it just doesn't attach. That's the hardware as opposed to software. So that's not a perfect analogy, but it would be like, or maybe like the plug-in, like the power supply for an Xbox, but you sold it as if it was a power supply for a PlayStation.
Wow, is that big of a difference, huh?
Yeah, it won't. They both are power supplies, but they have completely different connectors.
Okay, so after the podcast, I got to show you the lens because it hurt. It was one of those things where I've been selling all kinds of camera gear. So what happened is I had a haul early in June, and it was that haul from a friend of the family who had a lot of stuff they're trying to offload. And they just told me to take all the camera stuff, and they said it's probably not worth much. And I didn't think it was worth anything. So it just sat literally for about a month and a half, and I never touched it. And then I was like, I got kind of bored. I'm like, I need to learn some of this stuff. And I started picking it up, and I started looking up comps, and I'm like, whoa. Like I sold one lens for 80. I sold another lens for 50. I sold, I didn't know that you could sell camera bodies without the lenses.
Oh yeah.
For like good money. Like I sold one for, I think it was an Olympus M1 or M4 for about $150.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, bodies you find, because if you already have the lenses, that's the thing is like typically the body isn't the most important part unless you're looking at like really, really high end cameras. But you can get better pictures or better video from a low end camera body and high end lenses. So if somebody who already has the lenses, they just need the body, or so there's been times where I've just bought camera bodies, because when you go and you buy a camera at a store, the kit lens that comes with it 99% of the time is a garbage lens. So you're better off with a different lens anyway. So people who have their own lenses, or they're willing to buy a lens from somewhere else because the one they want, because again, it's like tools for a trade. Like not every lens does the same thing. So somebody might want very specific macro lens or a telephoto lens. They want it for a certain thing. And so
what I'm learning is like there's some that are like Snap-on tools and some that are like Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is all new to me. And I'm selling fast. Like I'm selling within 24 hours. And I ended up going, there's money to be made, because I always passed up on camera stuff. And right now I find that the more I delve into it, I can recall I saw this at a garage sale, I saw this at a thrift, and I just passed them up. And now I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna pass them up anymore. So it's one of those things in reselling that you always adapt, you change with the market, you find what people are looking for. And so that's been great. I've also had some nice pickups at garage sales. From random, baseball gloves to, this last weekend, it wasn't like a great weekend, but I picked up a $300 stereo for $20. And so if you've been catching our stories, I haven't had like major hauls the last few weeks, but I've had like, I'll pick up like 10 items and they'll make me like $500 to $600. Right. So they've been decent hauls. I find that garage sales are kind of waning a little bit at the moment right now. And I think it's just because we're hitting like the end of summer. And then it usually rebounds in September, October for us in California. Here's what's interesting. Somebody had, I don't know if you saw this in the Discord. Somebody had said, you guys talked about how good garage sales were when the economy was doing really well. And then you've also talked about how good garage sales are when the economy is in decline. And so they said, basically garage sales are good all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be instances, like very specific circumstances where, hey, garage sales are not good. The weather is really bad. Garage sales aren't good, right? So there are going to be times when garage sales aren't good. But so far, it does seem to be that the two ends of the spectrum, as far as there's a lot of money in the economy and it's easy money, or there's not as much money in the economy, or it's hard to come by money, enough money to afford a living, whatever it is. That garage sales are going to be doing good, and maybe for different reasons. People just want to offload stuff because, hey, I've got excess,
or they bought more and they need to make room,
and I don't really care about how much money I'm getting because, hey, money is cheap and it's easy. Or I really need to be able to make ends meet, and I guess I don't need my collectibles anymore. I'll sell them.
Yeah, it's like storage units, right? Yeah. When things are really well, people are buying up storage units because they have so much stuff. But when things aren't going well, people are losing their homes and are moving into smaller houses and they're renting out storage units, right? So I think the same principle applies. So maybe storage unit business is something we should get into. Yeah. Now, this other thing I want to share is it goes along with what you went with this. We had this possible deal that opened up. And then you want to start that story a little bit? Yeah.
So, gosh, it has to have been probably a good 7 or 8 months ago now at this point. But somebody reached out to me, and I didn't know who this person was, but it was like a friend of a friend. And if you listen to our last Monday mini, we were talking about the importance of developing those connections. They could happen through garage sales. Well, This was somebody who said, hey, I know you don't really know me, but so-and-so gave me your number and I hear you resell stuff and can you give me a call back? So I called the guy and he explains the circumstances, and it wasn't him that needed to offload some storage units, but it was his sister, I think. And the story, I didn't get the whole, I don't remember the whole story, but it was something like her brother or dad or uncle or somebody in the family had passed away, had several storage units worth of stuff, and they had just been paying every month paying to have this stuff. And they're like, we need to get rid of it. So they wanted
like several storage units. Yeah. And by the time they reached you, they already, I think, sold through 3 of them.
Yeah. So the idea was originally they were potentially, can we do, consignment? If not, would you buy the whole thing? So I talked to them back and forth a little bit. And it sounded like the stuff they had would be quite a bit of research on my end. Some of it was like military stuff and tools and things that I wasn't necessarily like, I know this perfectly, but I of course I'd love to see what you have. That I'm not going to turn that down.
Yeah, never say no. If somebody says, hey, why don't you come look at the stuff? And they tell you, it's just tools or something that you have no idea about, you should still go. I can't tell you how many times I've gone. And then there's a whole corner of stuff I completely know about. Right. Or you find out this stuff is valuable and you figure it out.
Yeah. You make it work. You do a little bit of research, and there's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, this is great. What are you thinking? Let me get back to you, tomorrow. If you like absolutely don't know at all and you need to do a little bit of research, unless there's like a bunch of other resellers there that they're talking to at the same time. If they're exclusively talking to you And you can say like, let me put together something that I think is fair for both of us. I'll come back with an offer tomorrow. Like if like worst case scenario, you could do something like that. But anyway, so I said, yeah, give her my number. That'd be great. And it was just crickets. I didn't hear anything. And then I happened to be in Michigan for a funeral, and I got a random text message that was from this lady. She's like, hey, my brother gave me your number and said that you do reselling. How does it work? And honestly, I'm right now at a position where one, I was like not around geographically. I was too far away. And then two, I'm already kind of tapped out on as far as amount of inventory I have. Now, of course, if it was like a killer deal of something, I wouldn't want to pass, but I've got a couple of moves coming up in the near future, and I don't want to have to deal with like building another shed and dealing with that or trying to move more stuff across country. So I was like, look, at this point, let me put you in contact with one of my friends, a buddy of mine. He does reselling. So I give him Orlando's number, and I just told
What if he
Orlando,
said somebody else?
Yeah,
I would be hurt.
Somebody else. I was like, hey, I know somebody that could do this, but
let me hit up my friend Frank.
But what I told Orlando, I said, look, man, I'm going to send this over to you. This might be a bust. It might be the deal of a century. My only thing is, if it happens to be the deal of a century, like if you end up like scoring off of this, just remember me, like a little bit of a kickback would be nice. So of course I trust Orlando, and I wouldn't think he would never. We have a good relationship. I'm not worried about anything like that, but I was just not in a position to buy it. So I sent Orlando over there, and how did it go? Did it work out? Not work out?
It was interesting. So I showed up, and they had told me it was tools and everything, which I'm not a big tool guy. I do know about certain kinds of tools, and I'm willing to buy something even if I'm not familiar with it, if I know I can get that money back pretty quick. And, usually my rule of thumb is when it's a bulk buy, I want to be able to make back my money with about 25% of the inventory. And it has to be inventory I know will sell pretty quick. So I showed up, and you had mentioned that there was possible like history stuff, military stuff, and all this, and I was like pretty excited because I know that stuff. I could sell that stuff, no big deal. And so I showed up, and it was a jam-packed storage unit, but it was jam-packed with a bunch of tool cabinets. And when I opened the tool cabinets, it was just like all kinds of randomness, and I couldn't tell if it was Snap-on or Matco or even Craftsman. Like I couldn't tell what was what. And then there was just a lot of randomness. And I went to the second unit, and there was a lot of randomness. And I kind of had asked, you should always ask whenever, there's kind of deals, like ask them like, oh, hey, has anybody gone through this? I always ask that because that'll be very telling as to what is still there if somebody has gone through it. So they had mentioned that before. They had put it up on I think Facebook or something, and people had come in and spent like $4,500, and then they did like in a garage / estate sale, and they made like a few $100s, and this is everything that's left over. So in my mind, I'm already going, okay, if there was anything valuable by now, it would have been picked up. Unless, here in San Diego, tools, man, like they're the first to go.
It goes fast.
They go before the sun even rises. Like they're my friends from across the border are here like at 4:30 in the morning buying tools, man. Like it's no joke. And so I was kind of like, this is kind of weird. Like, and I saw a few other items in there, and I was like, I don't know. And she gave me a price, and the price wasn't bad, but you got to think about how you're going to move stuff. This is one of the reasons Mike and I don't do a lot of storage units, is because, storage units can become it is a full-time thing, but it can really pretty much dominate your life if you don't know how to move stuff, right?
If you've got the setup, it could be ideal, right? If I was at a place when I'm finally have my own house, I have my own setup, I've got my inventory on my property, I already own a couple of trailers, that might be something I consider, right? Because then I can say, hey, on these days I buy storage units, and then I have a buddy of mine, and we go and we load the stuff, we take it, and we know who we can contact to get rid of furniture. We know who we can contact to get rid of this. We already know the dump rates, so we can kind of anticipate like how much is it going to cost us to like dispose of things. So you can get into that kind of routine and rhythm, and I think that would be great. It's just neither of us are currently set up for that. And so,
yeah, and I even threw out the idea of like, hey, we could do a swap meet. We could buy all this and go to the swap meet. But then you got to think about the hours, right? So I was calculating those, and you always undercalculate. You never overcalculate. And I was thinking, all said and done, from picking up, sitting up at the swap meet, being at the swap meet, it would be about 12 hours. And I started calculating the labor, and I just was like, I don't think I can do this. And so I had to walk away. Now, if you're in Discord, you did get my message about the items, and I'm hearing back from some of you by the time this podcast drops. And so I'm not saying that's why you should sign up for the Discord. Like this is not a common occurrence.
Yeah, because I mean, this is one of those things where, yeah, you're right. Although there have been people on our Discord who've been able to say like, hey, if you're in the whatever region, like here's a sale going on, or I've got stuff here. Or we've even had people saying I'm trying to offload a bunch of my inventory. Anybody interested in bulk buy? So that stuff does happen. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons we say like in reselling, you have competition, but not every reseller is your competition.
Correct.
Because, there could be times where, hey, I had this opportunity and I said, I can't jump on it. And it could have been a great deal. I handed it over to Orlando, and we are currently not set up, and he's currently not set up to like handle the current thing, but there could still be thousands of dollars potentially of profit.
There could be. And that's the thing. I just didn't know. Yeah. It was a lot, but I just couldn't tell. So anyways, we'll keep you posted on that. But here's the thing. Don't ever feel bad about walking away from a deal, right? Be ready to make the deal. Have that capital ready. Sometimes you got to take a risk. I got to tell you, this last year, there were times that I dropped a good amount of money on a local deal going, I don't know about this one. And then next thing you know, it became super, what do you call that? There's a word for it. Super, when something's super profitable, but there's another word. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Lucrative?
But it's very lucrative. There you go. Hey, I got to ask the English teacher. But it became very lucrative. And so that's just part of reselling. I would encourage you to not just go to thrift stores and not just go to garage sales, but do some of these local deals. Do some of these big buys if you have, some money that you're willing to risk, because most of my huge buys have been situations like this where I kind of knew about stuff, but I didn't know too much, and I ended up buying it all. And then I ended up doing really well. All right. What about you? What's going on with you?
I mean, part of the things we just talked about,
Okay.
So there was that whole incident, just listing. I've got a couple of moves potentially coming up. I mean, the big move that I'm hoping to do next year, and then one that might even come before that is like a temporary. So there's just a lot going on in my household right now, along with the fact that I mentioned on previous episode that I've got another baby on the way. So just tons going on, which makes for a interesting time for sure, especially during the summer. I expected to do a lot more this summer as far as sourcing and listing and selling and organizing. And I got probably a quarter of what I was anticipating. And a lot of that is my fault for not being as intentional. You just have to be like, you have to say, this is what I'm going to do. Here's my plan on doing and on how I'm going to accomplish my goals. And you have to do it. You can't just kind of have a nebulous, here is over the summer, I want to achieve good things. Like you can't have that, because it's just not going to, you're not going to have the kind of success you're looking for. So there is an aspect of it that falls on my shoulders. I will take responsibility. There's other parts that just unforeseen things came up. Like I said, I had a funeral I went to. I have my wife's pregnant now.
You have a lot going on. I mean, I have a lot going on, but you have a lot going on.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I think we all do, I mean, and at various times there are stages. I've had months and years where, man, it's just gravy train. Things are like super easy.
Oh, the first 2-3 years of the podcast, it was a gravy train. Yeah. I mean, I was just starting full-time reselling. I had that huge Toys R Us haul. My boys were at the age where they didn't have too many commitments.
Yeah.
It was a grand old time. And now it's
part of life.
Busy.
Though. Yeah, I think that's just, I think all of our listeners can relate to that,
Agreed.
And the fact that you're going to have seasons of life where things are kind of smooth sailing, and those seasons might be shorter or longer, just depending on circumstances. And then there's going to be times where it's just rough. And I hate that some people will take that they'll take difficult times and hard times, and then they just use that as an excuse for everything. Because I think there's balance. I think there's the balance of, hey, like I legitimately have things that have come up. I had a little minor surgery, and then I was traveling, and then all just potential move coming up that was like just a lot going on. But I'm still going to own the responsibility of, even with that, there's things I could have done differently.
No, I hear you.
So,
I hear you. But I like to extend you some grace.
I appreciate it.
Because there's the other side that I really am perturbed about, is the sense that the hustle culture of, there's, and no offense to any 20-year-olds. I know I sound like an old man saying this is a 43-year-old now, but like, hey man, if you're not getting the dollars you want to make, if you're not doing, your empire isn't being built, it's because you're not working hard enough and blah, blah. And I would say, yeah, that's an easy argument to make if you're single and, you're living at home in your basement. Like, yeah, you can say that all day. Yeah. Right. If you're just on social media, just dropping videos and on Instagram, and you can do that. But when you're on your own, like, for example, and I'm not trying to brag about myself, but when I moved to San Diego, I had nothing. I had no car. I had no furniture. I was freshly married. I had, I think my stepdaughter at that time was like a year old. I had no dining room. I had nothing. And, could I have embraced that hustle culture at that moment? There's no way. I had to slowly build, right? I had to, some people had to help me out, and I carpooled with somebody for like 3 months until I made enough money on my teaching job and I didn't even buy a car. Somebody gave me a car. Yeah. Right.
My new thing right now, kind of my motto that I'm going to be going forward over the next several years, and hopefully it's kind of like a life thing. But one of the issues I've noticed with hustle culture and things like that is,
as we're Pure Hustle Podcast, go ahead.
You can easily find examples of the person who, didn't sleep for 3 days while they, were working on some great project, and they never gave up, and they ended up making them billions. And you can find those examples. But typically success is a slower process. It's a slower building process. And I heard the term, and I'm going to embrace it because I think it's so good. It's glacial determination. And in the sense of, like, if you think of like a glacier, okay, it's so powerful. It's so immense, but it's slow. It's slow as it's moving across the ground, but nothing can stop it over the course of time. Over time, it will carve out mountains. Right. So like, I
like
kind
a motivational podcast.
Well, but that's what I mean. Is like, but normally a motivational speaker isn't going to say like, this could be your entire life to just see like the start of this thing, which is going to continue, or it's this idea of like, get it now. And yeah, you might have to wait 2 years, right? Like that's like kind of the idea. 5 years, you got to be willing to eat poop for 5 years, and then you'll make it. And it's like, no, I'm okay with the fact that this might be the rest of my life as I'm building towards and moving in the direction I want to move, but I'm going to leave behind me a path that people are going to say like, wow, like there was progress. Maybe it was, and it happened slowly. Like it's going to take time to see it.
I know it's going to sound weird, but those years of being poor, I'm grateful for. Yeah. And I'm not like Gary V grateful for, cause like, I learned to be rough, and I learned how to, adversity. No, it's not because of that. It's because I chose family, and I chose those moments over working 80 hours a week. And yeah, did it take longer? Yeah. Am I at 43 and I'm not where I want to be financially? Sure. But I did what I loved. I was teaching at the moment. I had a great family. I mean, it was all good, So I get what you're saying. Yeah. The glacier. Some glaciers move faster than others.
Glacial determination. Yeah. And that's fine. It would be great. Like it's one of those things where it would be icing on the cake if I make it and my empire is seen in my lifetime. But if it's not until like my kids can get to a place where they can say, hey, like dad set us up, like mom and dad made sacrifices and worked really hard and didn't sacrifice us, but also like helped set this thing up, that whether it's a family business, whether it's reselling, whatever it is, I'm okay with slowly working towards that, but then just applying that to other areas of my life when it comes to things like fitness, when it comes to things like progress in work, like all of those things. It's okay to say, hey, if I'm moving in the right direction, the person who sprints all out for a year is going to burn out if they make it a year. Most people burn out of that, but it's the person who says like, I'm going to every day move a little bit forward, or I'm not going to let myself move too far back. If worst case scenario, things happen, life happens, you slow down. just understanding that everything, in my experience, anything you plan to do typically takes twice as long as you were planning on it taking and costs twice as much. Right? Like if you're like, I'm gonna remodel this kitchen and it's gonna cost this much and it'll be done in a month. Well, it's probably gonna be 2 months and it's probably gonna cost twice that. Like things happen, and so when you build that in, you have those expectations. You have a much better go at it. Like life is easier because you're prepared for those hardships. And then when things do go better than expected, hey, that's just the icing on the cake. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Not tons. What about random stories? Anything random?
I'm just laughing because we went in such a different direction than I intended.
Hey, I mean, this is the kind of, if I could have a whole podcast where I talked about that kind of stuff, man, I'd be in it.
Hey, maybe we'll do that one day.
If you're interested in joining our side podcast, listening to our side podcast, let us know. We don't know what to call it.
After Hours podcast or something. Hey, by the way, though, another way to connect with us is also through our Discord, and our Discord continues to grow. And I got to tell you, we still have not had, I know it's coming, and maybe we'll have somebody troll us eventually, but we've never had to warn anybody. We've never had to say, hey, stay on topic. We've never had to say, don't, berate another person. I mean, we've had, moments where things got pretty intense on certain things because people are just people are, have opinions.
Yeah. And it's difficult too through text. Like things can be misunderstood. Some people just have personalities that are challenging. But
it's a community.
It's a community. And so there's always going to be a little bit of that, but we haven't experienced enough of that to say like, oh my gosh, like this is bad. So it's been great.
So what we're saying is it's a very welcoming, thriving community. It's everyone is reselling. We have full-time, part-time. We have people that do storage units. We have people that do auctions. We have individuals that do retail arbitrage, Amazon. It's all over the place. And so no one there, here's what I was thinking about the other day. And this is part of our Monday minisode coming up on Monday is no one has screenshot their 90-day total. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has.
Yeah.
Right. And I see that as a badge of honor in the sense that we're there trying to help each other. And again, I think there's a good pride. I don't think there's, I think some people, when they show their 90-day total, I think it's a source of inspiration for others, or they're trying to show, hey, this is what you can do. I'm not saying that's completely wrong, but a lot of the times it's more braggadocious. Look at me. Look at how hard I worked and blah, blah, blah. And I don't see that in the community. In the community, it's more like, hey, I picked up these items. You guys should look out for these. Hey, somebody, can you help me out? This is something new. I don't have expertise. And somebody jumps on it and shares. Or somebody's like, hey, let's be accountable to each other about listing. Let's be accountable about learning new things. So it's a really great place to be. So you haven't been on our Discord. It's super affordable, $5.55 a month, less than pretty much most things you can buy these days. So check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Pure Podcast. And once you sign up to the Patreon, Mike will send you a message to join our Discord, and you can be part of the Pure Podcast thriving community.
Yeah.
All right. So random stories. So I got a couple, but the first one, this was weird. So we always know what drop shippers look like because they always send us like, hey, please make sure there's no eBay tape. Make sure that, there's no invoice. This is a gift, right? Or whatever.
I wonder how many times it's not a drop shipper though. Like we know that that's what drop shippers use, but I have ordered gifts from people off of eBay and I'm like, I don't want them to know that like I got
and
this.
And you said, please don't send an invoice?
No, but I'm like, just thinking, because I don't put invoices in my stuff. But like, for instance, I bought my mom like it's called the Ember mug. And it's like a mug that's like it's an electric mug. So you charge it and you can, it's a smart mug. It connects to your phone. You can control the temperature of your drink. It keeps it warm for however long until the battery dies. And we were able to buy a brand new one on eBay for about 30% off of the price that they would go for on Amazon. But you when you're buying someone a gift, like you don't always want them to know like, hey, the $120 thing that I bought you, I actually paid a lot less for that. Like, just like you wouldn't put like, if you buy somebody a gift, like, that it was on clearance or so like, so I could see why some people buying a gift would be like, please don't put in there, that
I get it. But this time it was different. And I figured I was a drop shipper eventually. And you have to be willing to allow things to sell for more money than you had it listed for if your cost was low. Does that make sense? Like, like all the time we run into stuff and you hit a wall with research, and you have to be willing to say, you know what? I could spend another few weeks, months researching this, or I can just list it, and somebody who knows this stuff better will make more money on it. But hey, I make my piece of the pie, they get their piece of the pie, and we're good. So I talked to you about cameras, right? And I noticed that a certain model domestically was only selling for like 200 or something on eBay, and internationally is selling for like 500.
Oh, you got to be careful with that though, with cameras.
Okay, but let me explain to you. Let me finish the story. And I think I know what you're saying, but that's not where I'm leaning. So if the camera was sold from Japan, it sold for 500. If it's sold in the US, it was sold for like 200 something, right? So I put my comps in and everything, and I put that the camera was 4 parts not working. And they said, "Hey, I would love to buy your camera, but your camera says that it's 4 parts not working. Can you change it to as is untested?" And I was like, "What? Like, why?" And then they're like, "No, you need to change it because there's no category, and I needed to say as is untested." So at first I'm like, this guy trying to get an INAD, like he's gonna buy it and like return it. This is a scam. And I was like, you know what? I'll play ball. Because I'm not lying, I the only reason I put it for parts not working is because I haven't really been able to test it. So I changed it to as is. I changed it as untested, and sure enough, they bought it right away. Never got a return, never got a message about it, nothing. And then I started doing research into the username and the feedback, and they're a seller and they sell thousands of items. And this is my calculated guess, is that this was a drop shipper and they needed it in order for it to sell better. They needed to copy things and put it as is, right? And so they could show the person, it was like, let's say it was eBay in the United States, and they could show the eBay ad and they could show it to the third party, whoever it was, and say, "Hey, this isn't for parts not working. This is untested as is, it's fine." And they're probably, what I found out was they were the Japanese seller selling cameras for 500. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or am I crazy?
No. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I don't understand their business model, how they're able to do that, but I'm glad they are. And
I still made like a couple $100 profit, so I wasn't bothered about it.
Now, specifically with cameras, though, one thing I'll say you got to be careful with, especially if they're newer cameras, is that a lot of people will use newer DSLRs or mirrorless cameras for video. And if it is in England or UK or out of the States, not only is the formatting sometimes different with how it records, but also there are different regulations on whether or not, in order for something to be considered a video camera, I think it's in the UK. I could be off on this, but in the UK, Europe, that area, it might be all of Europe, there's a tax on video cameras that aren't on picture cameras. But the only way for it to be considered a video camera is it has to be able to record more than a certain number of minutes. So what the cameras do, they make them in the United States where it cuts off after a certain number of minutes, and so it stops the recording and restarts the recording almost instantly. So you don't notice any difference. It's basically 2 files.
Oh, wow.
My camera that I'm using right now does that. And so they do that so that they can be within compliance of the tax regulations.
That's so crazy.
And so some people want where it doesn't do that, or it does do that, or if you sell it to them and it's a version of the camera that doesn't do that, then there'll be separate taxes they have to pay. So you do have to understand with cameras that there are like legal aspects that you could potentially run into problems where somebody they want an American one or they want a European one for various reasons. And so, yeah, you when you're looking at comps, people will even ask you, I've sold enough cameras where people want to know, like, is this European? Is this American? Because the same camera, the exact same model, produced in different countries, have different features, essentially.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, it all worked out.
It all worked out.
It all worked out. And so the reason I bring this up too is all the YouTube videos out there, and you hear people all the time like, this person's trying to scam me, this person's trying to scam me. And most of the time, if you really listen or watch those videos, no one is trying to scam anybody. It's just an unhappy buyer, right? Or there was an INAD or there was something missed. Scammers are not even 1%, I would say, of people that buy stuff from me. So, do you have any other random story? I got a good one.
I mean, nothing huge other than the fact that when I was in Michigan, we stayed at an Airbnb, and it was an old like farmhouse. Pretty cool because they had actual farm animals still on the property, and they came a few times a day and fed them. But like my kid got to run around and like see the animals, which was neat. But the house itself was interesting because it was completely, furniture and stuff like that and decorations. But I'm sure some of the furniture and decorations were just like they went to a thrift store and bought stuff, but some of it I think is just old original stuff they had in the house that's just like part of the decor now. And so I was bored and I decided some of the time I was going to spend would just be like looking around at all this old antique stuff in this house and look it up on different, look up comps. How much does this sell for? How much does this sell for? And so it's kind of cool to be able to actually find a few items, because when you go to a friend's house, and you see things, you're like, oh, I wonder how much. Sometimes you can you just know because you've sold those things. But if you ever walked into somebody's house and they've got tons of antiques,
true.
You would be rude, I think, to just be walking around with your eBay app looking up how much their stuff is worth. But at an Airbnb, you can do that. And so I found a few items where I'm like, man, I'm going to be on the lookout for these. And a few things where I'm like, oh, this must be expensive. And then realize, oh, it's not. I wonder why. And then, oh, depends on so I actually learned a lot of things and found some really creepy stuff. One of the super creepy things that I found while I was there in our closet, I actually had to tell my wife that I would show her after we got, or the last day, because she didn't want to know what was in the closet.
Oh, wow. I'm looking at this. Okay. All right.
That has to be over 100 years old. So
you got to explain what's going on
there was
here.
A baby doll in the closet that it has to be at least 100 years old.
It was in the corner
of a closet with
creepily staring.
It looks like maybe it's made out of wood that's been painted or porcelain. I don't know. I didn't touch it because this is probably the scariest looking doll I've ever seen.
This is like a horror movie.
It's pretty interesting. But so that was in the noom that I slept in. That was in the closet. And so there were some interesting things that I found, but when you're a reseller, you notice things and you're like, I wonder how much that sells for.
So I have a random question. Was there a cleaning fee at this Airbnb?
There's always a cleaning fee.
How much was it? Can I ask?
I don't remember.
The only reason I say this is I am so anti Airbnb.
Why?
Because I've looked stuff up and they're like, oh, you must clean and keep it this way. And here's $150 if you don't. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to stay at a hotel. Like a hotel, I don't have to worry about making my bed. I don't have to worry about pulling sheets. I can, there's a pool and jacuzzi, there's room service. I mean, it's like,
it depends on what you're trying to do though. I mean, we often say Airbnbs when we're traveling and we're going to be somewhere for a few days, because then you have a house. If that's what you're trying to do, get a house. And because if you're just at a hotel, you really can't, you don't want to spend the whole day in the hotel. You don't want to, you don't have people over. If we're going somewhere.
Well, I guess the difference is when I travel, I usually am not staying where I am.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I stay at a friend's house.
That's what I'm saying. So this is basically like being able to go stay at a friend's house. Hey, we've actually got a kitchen. We can buy groceries and cook. I'm here for a week. I don't want to eat out every meal because, well, that's horrible. So
I'm the other way. If I'm out on the road, I'm going out to eat, man. I'm looking up Yelp and looking at the top restaurants,
Yeah, but every meal, there just comes a point where it's nice to be able to say hey, I'm going to do my laundry really quick and I'm also going to eat a bowl of cereal, or I'm going to cook up a grilled cheese sandwich, as opposed to, well, it's the morning, I got to drive out and then go home, and then, it's the afternoon, I got to drive out.
I guess just different perspectives.
Yeah, I think also just family too. When you're traveling with,
it does get expensive. Don't get me wrong. When I went across Wyoming and South Dakota and all that last year, I ate out every single meal. It was a lot of money.
Yeah. Let us know below. Would you prefer?
It's also a traveling podcast, by the way.
If you're going to be somewhere for a week, and you're going to be visiting family or whatever, would you rather be in a hotel room for a week, or would you rather be in an Airbnb? Let us know.
All right, there we go. All right, hey, so I had this. It's kind of like a hustle of a week, but I think the hustle of the week's going to be the follow up. So the other day, I'm on Craigslist, okay, and I'm looking in categories. So I don't do always save searches, because usually when you get the save search, it's probably too late. And so that happened to me a few times on Offer Up this last week, where I was like, oh, this is a deal. And then I message and it's it's gone already. So anyways, I go and somebody had posted 2 free Nintendo boxes plus several games. And I'm like, this has to be a scam. Because the other day I was on Offer Up and somebody said, I have 2 PS5s to give away for free. I ended up, getting getting a raise because I was moved up my company and they gifted me 2 PS5s. I'm like, what? No, nobody moves up in a company and gets gifted 2 PS5s. I mean, that sounds kind of weird. Or maybe just I'm weird. And they're like, oh yeah, just leave your name and number in the chat. And I was like, what? Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna do that one. But this one on Craigslist, I just thought, why not? I put my name, I put my number, they give me a call. And it was already posted for 3 hours. So I'm like, hey, maybe, it's probably gone already. So it was no big deal. I was just in the middle of something. I had to take one kid somewhere and take another kid somewhere. So I was just on Craigslist. I'm like, whatever. I get a call within 5 minutes. And it's an elderly gentleman. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't sound scammy, because usually it's some youngster or it's some out of country person. And I was like, hey, yeah, I was just inquiring about the Nintendo. Do you still have it? Like, oh, yeah, you're the first in line. You're the first to call. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I can be there now. Like, I didn't hesitate. Literally, when I'm on the phone, I'm putting, my sandals, because we wear sandals year round in San Diego. I'm putting my sandals on. I'm telling my son, get your sandals on, son. We got to go. And, and so he's telling me like, yeah, I try to test these out, but they weren't working too much. And I have some Nintendo games too. And I was like, I'm there. So I took off, took me about 50 minutes to get to where he's at. He was in a very nice part of San Diego. It was a nice part of San Diego. And I show up and the guy's like, oh, hey. And, luckily, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Orlando. I'm the guy that we talked on the phone. He's like, oh, yeah. Because somebody had waved to me earlier in the neighborhood and I thought that was you. And I was like, oh, man, like, wouldn't that be crazy if another person
walks out like a random box of like Nintendo stuff here to like someone just walking by?
Well, no. Or another person that had called who was like number 2 on the list just decided to do like a drive by and just waved. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's Orlando. And they just. Not saying that hasn't happened. I'm just saying like this was a wild pickup. So I show up and the guy brings out a box. And in this box, did I mention this is all free? This isn't to buy. This is just free. So it brings out a box, 3 Nintendo consoles, 8 Nintendo controllers. This is the 80s, okay, NES. Okay, 10 games, Super Mario Brothers 2 with box and manual, Kid Icarus with box and manual. We're talking about those go for $200 to $300 a piece each. Okay, if you have the manual, the box, the game cartridge, and the case. The zapper for the Nintendo. And I'm just like, I'm looking at this stuff. I'm like, this can't be real. Like, when's the last time at a garage sale you saw a bunch of Nintendo stuff? I can't. It's been maybe 4 years. And so I said, hey, so all for free? He's like, yeah. He's like, just take it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, hey, by the way, just want to let you know, I also, I sell other stuff. Here's my business card. He's like, oh, you do? I was just going to head on over to the Goodwill and I was going to drop off this doll and these things. And I said, let me be your Goodwill. And then he's like, fine. He's like, you want to take this? And he gave me a doll. The doll I think is worth $200 to $300.
Holy smokes.
Okay. I'll show it to you at the podcast. It was like a European, I forget what the name was, Alta Madura Fergura or something like that. Some Italian like doll. And then he's like, oh yeah, and I also have the steering wheel that my wife decided she wanted a different steering wheel on the car. And I looked it up, it's worth like $300. And I'm like, you got anything else? He's like, oh yeah, I got this new sealed in box Lego. And the Lego, I looked it up, was worth like $100 something. Nice. And he's like, I'm like, do you got more? He's like, you want more? I'm like, I want more. That's fine. So he had a bunch of vintage books and he gave me those vintage books and we were sharing stories back and forth. He had served, in the Navy and is telling me about his time in Japan. And we were just having a grand little time. And I said, hey, if you have any more, don't call Goodwill, just call me. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I wish you were here yesterday. You should have seen the stuff I donated. Oh, and I'm like, actually, I don't want to know. But it's interesting because a lot of people don't understand that. Like some people they just want to offload stuff. Like this guy didn't want any money, like at all. I even asked him, and he's just like, no, just take it, just take it. And so I'm hoping to get another call of more stuff because he said he has a lot of other stuff that his wife is telling him he needs to let go of, and it was just an awesome time. So it's a huge haul. It's gonna, I can't go wrong. I make $1. I'm already, well, if I make 30, I'm in the profit because, gas cost me about 20. Okay. But, it was definitely a haul. So ton of Nintendo games. Unfortunately, the 3 consoles didn't work like he said. One of them though, I kind of started smacking the side of it and like it worked.
There you go.
So I was able to like test 3 games and then I got the pink screen of death where it just blinks again. So, I'll find a console that worked and I'll test out the rest of the games.
Maybe it's your cables. Maybe it's the connector to the TV you're using.
Well, it could be. But
maybe they're all working just fine.
And I'm just like smacking Nintendo for no reason.
It for no reason. Because if are you using the same cord for all 3?
No, I changed out the cords.
Oh, I was gonna say like maybe it's a common denominator there.
No. It was just, and it was really tough to get the cartridge in. I had to like shove it in and push it down. So there's some issues with it.
Yeah.
So and the guy, I think the guy was like an engineer, so I think he knows what he was doing when he was like trying to make it work. So I don't know. Anyways, I think I'm gonna make on the haul probably about 1K. So
hey, from free to a K, it's pretty good.
It's hustle of the week, but I thought I'd share now.
Yeah,
so.
I like it.
All right, we've been talking a lot. All right, hey, American Bubble Boy, haven't checked it out? You should. Cheapest Bubble Boy out there.
It's the cheapest Bubble Boy. If you need to buy a Bubble Boy or some bubble wrap,
cheapest bubble wrap out there. Best shipping, free 2-day, next day. You can also do local pickup. Check them out, AmericanBubbleBoy.com. Use our link below because it helps us out. It is an affiliate link and it helps you out because you get the best bubble wrap in the fast amount of time. All right, if you haven't followed us on social media, we are Pure Soul Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Isn't TikTok supposed to go away? Every time I hear that, I'm like, it's not really going to go away. So, but we need to get back on there. I might get on there and do another. I was on there with Wayne from K-Way Shop for like an hour. So it was a good time. So go follow him if you haven't followed him. And also we are Pure Soul Cast on Twitter. You can leave us a call at 619-738-1170 at 619-738-1170 or shoot us an email at puresoulpodcast@gmail.com. That's puresoulpodcast@gmail.com. As always, grateful for all of you that come on over from the podcast and always leave a comment about, wow, you guys look so different than I imagined from the podcast. And hopefully that's a good thing. But if you haven't seen our mugs, jump on over to YouTube, subscribe, hit that bell notification and smash that like button. And last of all, help us out on the podcast. We are the #1 reselling podcast, but we want to stay there. And one of the reasons that we're able to be there is because of all the awesome listeners that have stopped by, left a positive review, and helps us out in the Apple iTunes algorithm. So if you haven't done that yet, make sure you jump on over to iTunes. I think we're at 600 or so. We'll talk about it on the next episode. So
nice.
Thanks so much. All right. We got some quick reseller news here.
Things are happening in the reselling community. We're going to talk about it because that's what we do on Reselling News. Orlando?
Oh, reselling topics.
Take it away.
All right.
It's Reselling News.
It's Reselling News. All right. So real quick, we always complain about eBay and how eBay, by the way, has not still instituted their whole, if you send an offer, get an offer that you're going to get paid right away, which I'm not sure when that's happening. I mean, they said last spring update or winter update.
They can just keep talking about it and everybody will be happy that it's eventually going to come.
It's just the most obnoxious thing. Like, just explain to us. If you just tell us why you don't, maybe I won't be as bothered by it. But I hope they get that figured out by eBay Open in September, because I'm sure that question is going to come up at eBay Open. So I don't know. Because this last fall seller check-in, and I'll talk about it, they didn't even bring it up. They didn't even talk about it. So, all right. Hey, Amazon is offering layaway. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I guess it depends on the concept of how it's being used.
So you got to put 20% down.
Okay.
And you're locked
price.
You're locked in the price, but you can get out of it if you want.
Now,
you lose the layaway.
Does it only work for sold and fulfilled by Amazon?
It's for anything that sells on Amazon. So it's only certain products. I don't know what products they are.
I just mean, as opposed to like, okay, you're sending something into Amazon. Can somebody lay away your item that you sent into Amazon?
I think so.
Or
it's still kind of vague. It's not fully developed on there.
It just, to me, in today's day and age, I mean, I like the idea of layaway in the sense of it's a better way of buying something, because avoids the debt. But we live in a culture where, I mean, you got a credit card, you just buy it and you pay it on the credit card. Not that I'm for that. I think it was probably better in the day of teaching people hey, I want this thing. I'm going to give you a little bit so you hold it for me, and I don't get to have it until I pay it off.
I have answers.
Okay.
So it's not going to affect resellers, but it will affect resellers. Because guess what? Somebody can buy something on layaway instead of buying it from you, and they're short on money. They're going to buy it on layaway.
I just can't imagine how many people in today's...
man. Don't you remember Kmart?
Yeah, but again, yeah, maybe. I mean, I could totally be wrong, but I just feel like Amazon already offers that you can buy this and make payments from them, but you get the item in advance. So even without a credit card, like they do interest-free 6 months. This is how much you pay, like all the time when I buy stuff.
Do you need a credit score though?
Maybe it's because I have an Amazon credit card that I get those offers, but all the time that could be it too. But I would imagine most people would get one if they wanted those deals, because Amazon's always putting those out there. Like there's like one, for instance, when we bought our fifth wheel and I was doing the solar stuff, a lot of the solar items I got, cables, wires, connectors, different various things I got from Amazon, and even a generator. So I spent probably close to like $3,000 or $4,000 on Amazon, a lot of money. And it was nice because they had those things set up where, hey, for the next 18 months, depending, or even when I bought my laptop that I use for editing these podcasts, I was able to buy it interest free, and they just set it up like for the next 18 months, your payment will be $137 a month or whatever that, So you're basically doing layaway, but you get the item. So it's weird to me that they would then offer like an actual layaway, because then that's a lot of work on their end. And it just seems like so many people would prefer to do I will pay for the next 10 months, $80 for this $800 thing, as opposed to doing layaway. And then I don't get it until the 10 months is up.
Yeah. We'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, they said, shop for thousands of Amazon layaway items. Pay 20% of the total cost at checkout to reserve your item and lock in the price. Pay off your items early for quicker delivery. And note that Amazon layaway is only available for items shipped and sold by Amazon. Yeah. So, I think this is going to bring greater competition in the retail arbitrage space.
Maybe. Maybe.
I don't know. We'll see.
If they already have the buy box, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know. Let us know your thoughts. I don't know. I just thought to me, it's a sign of a downturn economy. Allowing more people to buy stuff on credit, just not a good thing. Yeah. So, all right.
As long as they don't start doing renting, where you can rent the item from them.
Oh, man.
Those rent-a-centers?
I learned they're still around. Like, sad. we just have to drive like 20 minutes from here, and they're always in.
I feel like those are like loan shark people.
They're always in because they're in the poorest parts of town, along with the payday cash advances, all those.
I'm sorry, those places totally take advantage of poor people. It's awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Now, my people make choices though. I mean, I did do the payday loan back in the day, like twice. Never again.
No.
But I was broke.
Yeah.
I never did the rent though. Somebody had told me, don't ever do it. And I just went and bought on Craigslist. All right. Hey, so eBay on their, if you go to the eBay seller community, they actually are doing a thing to help with taxes. They're working together with a company called Tax Act, and there's all these Q&A parts. If you have questions, they'll help you fill out 1099. Because remember, the threshold is no longer 20,000, where there's a 1099 being sent, and that you have to do taxes, and now it's $600. And that's even if it's just some random thing from your house that probably has lost value. If you sell enough of those and it's $600, the IRS is coming for your money. And not only that, if you haven't been checking, the news lately, legislation has passed, and we're going to have 87,000 more IRS agents that are armed coming after your dough.
Well, not all of them will be armed, but
did you see the job posting though?
Yeah.
Job posting that's like you have to be willing to work with firearms in life-threatening situations. Like what?
Now, the thing though, I again, like Pure Hustle Podcast is definitely has always said, don't game the system. Take whatever tax deductions you can take. We're not advocating and have never advocated for people to try and lie and cheat the system.
Oh, no way.
However,
you gotta do your tax.
However, what we kind of look at is the problem with this like $600 thing is, again, you could sell $600 worth of stuff and have sold it at a loss. So you actually don't owe any taxes. However, you're not going to be able to just do the TurboTax lowest one anymore. And you might not know that. And now all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, now I have to like fill out lots of more. So you're basically putting a lot more burden on just the average person. Now, instead of them doing their taxes and it taking an hour and going somewhere, now it might take them 5, 6, 7 hours for 1 or 2 transactions they did and hoping they did it right so that they don't end up getting audited and they don't actually owe anything. So I don't think this is like, as a reseller who's filing our taxes and paying our taxes every year, it's like, okay, this doesn't really affect us in that sense. However, this just has a huge impact on reselling in general because a lot of those sells and people are going to be impacted on things like eBay. And when people start to say, I'm never selling anything on eBay ever because you have any idea what it did to my taxes? I had to spend hours working on I had no idea what I was doing. I had to prove that I sold it at a loss and I'm never selling on eBay again. And then people will just give up on, and I just feel like that's just a bad taste in people's mouths. So,
well, along with that though, there's a lot of new sellers that aren't aware. Right. They, if I was a youngster, if I was like 18 or 19 years old, right, and I'd sold like $5,000, I would have never thought twice about doing taxes on it. Honestly, like I grew up in a very urban area. I had a lot more things going on than learning about the new legislation that passed.
Yeah. Well, and then truth be told, if you're selling $5,000 worth of stuff, for the most part, you probably don't actually owe any taxes.
100%, but you still have to report it.
But the reason you don't owe any taxes on it, because by the time you were to fill in all of the things you actually could take a deduction for and how much your net profit actually was and how much, like, by the time you're done with all of that, it's just the amount of time now that you have to. Yeah. So that's the hard part is it's a burden on people, that it doesn't seem to be targeting the people who actually needs to target, as
and
far
those
as
people already are targeted. Like, anyways, I can go on and on about that. So listen, I agree with what Mike says. We've always been about
pay your taxes,
be above reproach, pay your taxes. Because in the end, it's better to be able to just have everything in order. It helps you out. It keeps you more profitable. You know your numbers, you know what's going on. So part of that is good bookkeeping is just a good thing to do. And I know some of us, including myself, that's one of the things we don't enjoy doing, but it's a necessary part of being a reseller, especially a full-time reseller. All right. So I wanted to talk about real quick about some of the eBay seller check-in things that they talked about this fall, just real quick here. There was an interesting dichotomy that they established between returns. So for eBay, they see returns in 2 ways. They see returns as either their buyer changed their mind. And so this buyer changed their mind could be the item didn't fit, it was an item they didn't like. It was just, it's nothing super substantial. Right. And so there, I ordered this item by mistake. I didn't like the color, the towel. I don't need this anymore. And then they see the other side as item not as described. So this is when something is broken, not working. Something is listed as new, but it's used. It arrives broken. I didn't know that fell under that category. So even though that's a shipping thing, eBay sees that as item is not as described. So the reason I tell you this is because a lot of people, I get this all the time. When I talk about returns on Instagram, there's always those people that, and no, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but they'll just jump on there and go, yep, easy solution, no returns. I'm like, was the mic supposed to drop? Or was everybody supposed to go like, whoa, this guy? No, that's not an easy solution because guess what? If you get an INET, eBay will force the return on you. And you will still get the defect. eBay will not protect you under an INET. So you can say, I don't want to do returns all day long, but chances are you will eventually do a return. Now, why is it good to do returns? Well, there's only one way to really get yourself any kind of seller protection is by offering returns. Right? We've talked about this more than 100 times on the podcast that when you offer returns, it allows you the ability to fight a negative feedback because if they don't return it, you can say, hey, the buyer obviously was satisfied with the item. I tried to make things right with the buyer. They refused to return it. And that's it. Right now, I know there's always anomalies out there and people are like, yeah, Orlando, I did all that and they still kept it on there. I don't know what to say about those. Okay. The other one, if you're a top rated seller, you can give 50% back. Right. And if your costs are low, most of the time, even on that 50% return, that you have to give back in the refund, you're still making money on that item. So be aware of that. They also had talked about the only way to find out bad buyers is by people reporting them. So they said that like sometimes they get situations where like one buyer reports about 10% of the bad buyers and no one else is saying anything about it. So they just discount it. But if there's a lot of people reporting that same bad buyer, they know it's a bad buyer. Does that make sense? And they've also were talking about they're trying to use AI now to do like predictive ways to figure out who's a bad buyer through third parties.
I mean, they should be able to do it within their own thing, just metrics. If you got buyers who are constantly complaining about everything, like statistically, that doesn't, not 80% of your things you buy on eBay can't be INAD or you can't have a complaint on. But I just think that maybe it is easy. I think reporting a bad buyer should be very simple. Like when you're doing feedback, there should be like a to eBay button of like, report buyer.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be easy. Otherwise, if it's a process to find, nobody's going to do it. Like that's what I've learned when it comes to things like technology. If you don't make it easy and very accessible, people they're not going to do it. In business, same thing. When you're trying to get someone to sign up for something, you can't make it like, hey, sign up for this thing. But if you want to sign up for it, you're going to have to do this and actually open up a different browser. And then you're going to have to, can you also like maybe only do it between this hour and this? It's done. People aren't going to do it, right? Like, you've got to make it easy.
And I think that's one of the fails that eBay did when they removed the buyer feedback, right? Because that was easy. Right now, it's like, how to report? Well, you can still report, but there's still some, clicks you have to get through and you have to kind of know where to go. The other thing that I thought was interesting, I don't know. So Mike and I are free market capitalists. Okay. And I think they brought in like a Keynesian economist who works for eBay. They're talking about like how inflation had a silver lining and how higher wages is a good thing. And I'm like, higher wages cause inflation. Anyways, I just thought it was an interesting thing. But here's so something that they said, higher wages are good and higher earners will have more discretionary income. Okay. That debt levels are the lowest since the pandemic, but I've actually seen reports that show that credit levels are higher than they've been in the last few years because people are going more into debt. But regardless of all that, we all agreed, and the individual from eBay said that retail spending, according to the latest data, is at its highest. And they anticipate e-commerce to continue moving forward in that direction. So whether you go into the direction of, hey, it's good that the government keeps pumping money into the economy and inflation goes higher, I guess you still see that retail is going to do well. Or if you're you see how Mike and I see it, that, hey, or how the reality is that recession's not a good thing, that people are still going to look for those deals and then go to eBay for the secondary market. Hey, we should be good this Q4. So to me, it's encouraging that wherever you land in the school of economics, reselling should still be okay. So I found that encouraging. Now, along with that, they said a couple of things that I thought were interesting. They said that earlier is becoming more standard for the holidays. And we've talked about that. But they had stated that 10% of holiday shopping happens before October. So if you haven't listed yourself for Q4 yet, it's August. That means people are buying in September. So, and I've already have sold some Q4 stuff, like some stuff that I haven't sold since last Q4 that are selling on Amazon now. That, there used to be this thing where people are looking for last second gifts, that's not a thing as it used to be anymore. So you're better off selling sooner than selling later. And we actually talked about this last year. I had talked about how October and November were far better months than December was for me in Q4. So things to think about. And then, that November shopping festivals like Black Friday and all that aren't a thing anymore, right? That people are more going online. So I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. Pendulum swing. I think it's going to go back and forth. People probably buy earlier because there's the fear of shipping takes a long time. Things might not come in. There might be the stuff might not be in stores. And then a couple of years of that, of everybody buying early. And then if the most expensive time and hardest time to get things is October, November, because that's when everybody's buying. And then come December, there's tons of sales and the shipping is easier. Then it's going to swing back the other way. And people are going to be like, I'm just going to wait closer to December. It's too crazy right now. People are going crazy buying stuff. I'm just going to wait until the prices come down. And so it's everybody's trying to avoid the rush. But I think there's always going to be a good portion of the population who's just lazy is probably not. They're procrastinators. They just procrastinate, and they're gonna buy last minute. I mean, if you see like come Mother's Day, come whatever it is, like there's the stereotypes of like, the dad's always waiting till the last minute to get a gifts and
jingle all the way.
Yeah, those stereotypes are there for a reason, and they're there because just humans in general, a lot of people tend to procrastinate those things. And
but not everybody's a Toby.
No.
Grabbing the unicorn doll at the last moment.
But when there's just two different types of people. I mean, there's lots of different types of people. You get the typical type A, like my wife. She'll plan what everybody's gonna get. We'll buy it all early. Christmas cards have been sent out months early. Like it's all planned out. We're done. But that's only because she does those things and that's what she cares about. If it was up to me, like I'd be waiting until like, all right, we've got like a week until Christmas. All right, what are we getting everybody? So it's just, I think there's always going to be people who are buying later. There will be people, and it's probably the type A people who are wanting to avoid the rush. They want to make sure that, hey, I want to order early enough so that shipping isn't an issue. And so if November or October become the new December as far as shipping time slowing down and item prices going up and things being out of stock, then they're going to catch on and they're just going to wait. So it's a weird dynamic, but I think it'll just be a pendulum swing. People will always buy things though. So that's just from the data and from my own personal experience, I think people are going to buy it early. Either way, get your stuff listed. It definitely, it's not going to hurt to list it.
No, it doesn't hurt to list.
Because then you get both groups, the people who are buying early and the people who wait.
There you go.
If you list late, you're only getting the people who buy late.
Now, I thought this was interesting. The one category that there's deflation happening is in electronics. So they're going down 10 to 20%. And the reason being is a lot of people already bought the electronics that they want during the pandemic, which makes sense. So if you're a big electronics buyer, just be aware. I mean, your company could maybe take a 10 to 20% hit as far as your pricing because, people aren't buying as much as they were in the last 2 years. I thought this was another interesting point. I had a Q&A at the end. They said 30% of messages for apparel are about measurements. And we had a back and forth in the Discord about this. Like, should I take measurements, put in my listing? And I've always been a big believer, like you should always put measurements. It saves you time. You don't have to deal with messages. But if eBay is saying 30% of their messages are people asking about measurements, then that should just be enough to say, hey, I probably should put some kind of measurements in my listing. Now, you could go the other way and go, well, 70% aren't. Well, okay. I mean, if you want to deal 30% of the time with those kind of messages, up to you. And hey, they actually talked about they're looking to clean up the item specifics. Like, for example, the character under apparel, they may remove that. So I'm looking forward to that because item specifics, man, still a bear. So all right, that is our reseller topics, and now to what everybody has fast forwarded to. Bolo. What's your bolo?
So my bolo, we're coming into school year, and we've talked in the past about, start of the school year is like its own little mini Q4 for various items that, you can get into. But one of the things, there is a huge trend. Maybe not everybody's aware of this, but I work in a public school, and my family homeschools. So I'm kind of in both worlds. There's a huge shift towards homeschooling. It's like the
mass
rate,
20,000 missing students in LA Unified.
Yeah, it's insane. The number of it's like the lowest, I think, in California's like history, as far as like there's always like growth in the number of students. Like there's actually a decline happening in a lot of districts, and it's never happened like that before. So there are a lot of families moving towards homeschool. So my bolo is homeschool type supplies and items, and specifically if you can get your hands on it, curriculum, even used. So there's a lot of them, like some of the really popular ones, Becca, Oak Meadow, Sunlight, Classical Conversations, various ones like that. Like if you can get the curriculum itself, and it sells really high use. I mean, if you look up some of the Becca curriculum stuff, if people have bought, the curriculum for like a grade level, their kids have gone through it, they don't need it anymore, they're selling it at a garage sale, or you find it on Craigslist. I mean, we're talking some of this stuff goes for $700-800 because it's a whole year's worth of curriculum and maybe multiple subjects. So just check it out. I've sold lots of homeschool stuff throughout the years, and especially as it's growing, it might be harder to find used stuff right now, but the more families that are getting into it, they're buying the stuff new. And eventually there's going to be a lot of people trying to sell this stuff, getting rid of it. And if this trend continues to happen, there's going to be a lot of money in it.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I teach a homeschool co-op. I teach several classes in homeschool co-op, and I've doubled in size. So yeah, it is. I mean, anecdotally, I can tell you it's growing. All right. So I've talked a lot about cameras. We've talked about a lot of cameras, but look for 35 millimeter cameras. Not all of them are made the same, but like Olympus is a good one. Sometimes you can find some Canon ones. Sometimes there's some Nikon ones, or, just whatever.
Are you talking about film? Like 35 millimeter film?
No, cameras.
Yeah, well, it's the film in like a film camera, because 35 millimeter is also like the size of a sensor of a DSLR.
Okay.
So like if you got a 35 millimeter sensor,
a point and shoot,
a full frame sensor, those, full frame cameras are really expensive. But if you're talking about film cameras, it's different.
Okay. So I don't know all about it. What I'm telling you is, 35 millimeter, like for example, I've sold in the last month 3 35 millimeter. 2 were Olympus and one was, I can't remember what brand, for over $100 a piece. One for $200 a piece. And these were cameras like in the 90s that I would have maybe picked up for like, I don't know, $50. So just keep an eye. People just like the kind of pictures they produce. So I'm still learning. All right. Hey, one thing though that's still been quality for us is Skull Shaver.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where now, as I have to make sure that I'm always looking at my best, because you never know who you're going to run into. Right. And I say that just because, I think during the pandemic, we all got used to just chilling at home, not shaving every day, maybe wearing the same shirt 2 or 3 times during the week.
Telling on yourself, Rolando.
No, I actually change my shirt every day, but I wear the same kind of shirt. So it doesn't seem like it. I just wear Pure Hustle Podcast shirts every day, 7 days a week.
Rocking the brand.
There you go. But hey, now people are out gonna, you might be looking for that second job to secure a space for yourself during, this recession, to make sure that you're still bringing in that money. And one of the best ways to look good for that interview is to use a Skull Shaver. Yeah. And I got to tell you, always gives you that smooth look. I used my Skull Shaver today and I'm good to go. Mike, did you use yours today?
Every day.
Every day. So check us out, skullshaver.com. Use the link below. Use our promo code HUSTLE with a capital H. All right. What are you looking forward to here, Mike?
I'm hoping to do, I've talked about it on previous episodes, but I'm been organizing and preparing for the swap meet. I'm planning on doing it this coming weekend. The only thing is, like, I hit a hiccup of, if I do this on my own and I'm there all day, like, I don't know like how I'm going to handle things like restroom breaks and stuff like that. So, I mean, honestly, there was a fear I had, like just driving. I'm like, wait a minute, I can't go alone. Like, how am I supposed to do this? So, I'm not sure. Maybe some of you guys have experience with that kind of stuff. Not everybody's going to have a partner that they're doing those things with. No, that's bad. So I don't know if like there's part of the culture there, like at swap meets, that you just ask the vendor next to you, like, hey, can you watch my, booth for a minute? So I don't know whether it's that, or if I have to wait until, my wife can come and help for a day or something. I don't know. So that's my only hiccup. But I'm looking forward to that. What about you?
So I'm still trying to figure out QuickBooks. I haven't touched it because I am finalizing my taxes. So by the time we have our next update, I should be pretty much done. So, and you might ask, Orlando, why so long? Okay, one of them is I just want to make sure that I have every deduction. So I had to take extra time, and there were a lot of items in Q4 that I didn't sell. So I'm gonna have to, they're a loss, and then I have to also figure out all my traveling. There's just a lot of there's 1099s. There's revenue from other income streams. So I didn't want to rush it and not maximize how much I don't have to pay the government. And so I just want to make sure I had everything right, and I was better off, and I knew that I knew I was going to be okay. So just put it that way. And markets were interesting last year. I still remember sitting here when Ethereum was like at $4,300. Do you remember that?
I do.
And I remember you saying it's going to crash eventually. And now it's dying to just get to 1900 right now.
What can you do?
So I took some major hits on that. So anyways, that's why. So finalizing my taxes, and I need to organize my items again. I don't know what happened. I had 4 items that did not have a custom SKU label, and I lost 4 hours of my life. It's just, and I had to cancel 2 of them. I had to send that message like, hey, are you willing to take something else or cancel? Just, it's the worst.
It's the worst.
So anyways, all right. Hey, hopefully you were able to gain a lot from this podcast. I know this was, well, we talked about a lot of things. So there should have been something there. Always appreciate all of you. Make sure to, hit that like button. If you're listening to podcasts, just come on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe. Appreciate every single one of you. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Late.
Peace.